2 children are born on the same day, in the same city. By the time they're 30, one owns a company. The other is still paying off a loan he took to finish his degree. Neither of them made the choices that separated them. The choices were made before they were born. And the most unsettling part? Both of them believe their life is the result of their own effort. In the 1970s, a French sociologist named Pierre Bourdieu asked a question that nobody in his field wanted to answer. Why do people born into disadvantage almost always stay there, even in societies that tell them they're free? His answer didn't blame the poor. It didn't celebrate the rich. It described a hidden architecture, invisible rules, invisible advantages, invisible barriers, that most people spend their entire lives inside without ever seeing the walls. By the end of this video, you'll see them. The job interview that reveals everything. Imagine 2 people walk into the same job interview for the same position. They have identical CVs, same university, same grades, same internship experience. On paper, they are the same candidate, but in the room, something is different. The first candidate sits down and immediately feels at home. He knows when to lean forward and when to lean back. He makes a joke at exactly the right moment. Light, self-deprecating, confident. He mentions almost casually that he spent a summer in Geneva. He shakes hands with the interviewer not like someone asking for a job, but like someone deciding whether he wants one. The second candidate is equally qualified, equally intelligent, but she sits slightly too straight. She answers every question thoroughly, carefully, completely, which reads as nervous. When she tries a joke, it lands wrong. She mentions her part-time job during university. She thanks the interviewer 3 times at the end. Neither of them is performing. They are both being exactly who they are, and that is precisely the problem. The first candidate grew up watching his father close deals at dinner tables that looked like that meeting room. He spent weekends at his parents' friends' houses, architects, lawyers, directors, learning by osmosis how power speaks. He never studied this. He absorbed it. The second candidate grew up in a household where every month was a calculation, where knowing the right people was something that happened to other people, where confidence in professional settings wasn't modeled because nobody around her had been in one. Same room, same opportunity, completely different game. Bourdieu had a name for what the first candidate had, and the second didn't. He called it capital. Most people, when they hear the word capital, think of money. Bourdieu said money is only one kind. He identified 3 others that are just as powerful and far less visible. The first is economic capital. This is the obvious one. Wealth, assets, financial inheritance. The child who never worries about university fees. The adult who can absorb a failed business because there is a safety net. Money doesn't just buy things. It buys risk tolerance. It buys time. It buys the ability to fail without falling. The second is social capital. This is who you know. And more precisely, who knows you. The mentor who introduces you to the right person. The network that passes along the job before it's ever posted. The friend who puts in a word. Studies consistently show that the majority of professional positions are filled through connections that never appear in any public listing. Social capital is invisible infrastructure. And like all infrastructure, you only notice it when you don't have it. The third, and this is the one almost nobody talks about, is cultural capital. Cultural capital is knowing how to be in a room. It's the accent that signals education without saying a word. It's knowing which fork to use at a formal dinner, not because that matters in itself, but because the person watching you knows that you know, and updates their assessment of you accordingly. It's the book you reference, the film you mention, the music you grew up with. It's the ability to code switch, to move between worlds and feel at home in all of them. Cultural capital is not intelligence. It is not effort. It is the set of behaviors, tastes, and instincts that were built into you by the environment you grew up in. And in almost every professional, academic, and social context, it is being evaluated, silently, constantly. But Bourdieu's most important concept, the one that explains why all of this is so hard to see, is what he called habitus. Habitus is the internalized map of the world that lives in your body, not your mind. It's not what you think about your position in society, it's what you feel. The instinct that tells you this space is for someone like you, or this space is not. The posture you adopt when you walk into a room full of people who seem more powerful. The voice you use when you're talking to someone you perceive as important. The assumption, automatic, pre-rational, built before you had the language to question it, of what is possible for a person like you. Habitus is learned so early and so completely that it stops feeling like learning. It feels like personality. It feels like who you are. And this is Bourdieu's most radical claim, that what we call merit, confidence, eloquence, taste, ambition, the quality of seeming naturally suited to success, is, in large part, the habitus of the class you were born into, expressed as individual talent. The game is real. The players are real. But the starting positions were assigned at birth. Where you recognize this today, you don't need to be poor to have experienced this. Think about the first time you walked into a room where everyone seemed to know something you didn't. Not a fact, not a skill, but a way of being. A networking event. A business dinner. A university common room. A job you got but spent 6 months feeling like a fraud in. That feeling has a name. Psychologists call it impostor syndrome. Bourdieu would call it something more precise. The misalignment between your habitus and the field you've entered. A field, in Bourdieu's framework, is any structured social space with its own rules, its own currency, its own hierarchy. The corporate world is a field. Academia is a field. The art world is a field. The medical profession is a field. Each one has its own form of capital that it values above all others, and its own set of unwritten rules about who belongs. When your habitus matches the field, you feel at ease. Things come naturally. You don't have to think about the rules because you already know them, not intellectually, but in your bones. When your habitus doesn't match the field, you feel the friction. You're always slightly translating, always watching others to understand what the correct move is, always spending energy on legibility, on being understood as someone who belongs, that others spend on actual work. This is why first-generation university students often outperform their peers in pure academic terms, but report higher levels of anxiety and lower levels of belonging. They have the intellectual capital. What they're still building is the cultural capital, the habitus of the academic field, and that gap is exhausting in ways that never appear in any ranking. This is also why the advice, just be more confident, is not advice. It is the instruction to change something that was built into you over 20 years of lived experience in a single moment using willpower. Confidence isn't a decision, it's a residue of environment. So what do you do with this? Bourdieu wasn't writing a self-help book. He wasn't interested in telling individuals how to game the system. He was trying to make the system visible, because invisible systems are the most powerful kind. You can't question what you can't see, but there is something personal in it. If you have ever felt like you were working twice as hard as someone else for half the recognition, you weren't imagining it. The field was tilted. Your habitus was penalized for not matching a set of rules you were never taught. And if you have ever succeeded, genuinely succeeded, and still felt like a fraud, that feeling is also not irrational. It is the experience of someone whose habitus hasn't yet caught up with the field they've entered. It takes time. It takes exposure. And it has nothing to do with whether you deserve to be there. The children born on the same day, in the same city. One owns a company. One is still paying off a loan. Neither of their lives was purely chosen. But yours, at least partly, still can be. Not by ignoring the structure, by seeing it. If this is the kind of lens you want to look at the world through, subscribe to PsyLens. Every video is another piece of the hidden architecture made visible. I'll see you there.